I was born to a Hindu family in the eastern part of India, in the middle of nowhere. We say the rustic and rural village. We used to worship a lot of gods and goddesses. My father was a clan priest, so after him, the evil spirit chose me to be the next priest for the clan. So I was under training.
Did y'all actually refer to it as an evil priest?
Evil spirit?
Y'all referred to it as that?
Oh yeah, we many times we do that.
Wow.
And so we used to worship. Even I, in the process of learning to be a priest, went through lots of mantras and slokas and all those, chantings. I was able to chant almost 500 mantras without a stop.
Wow.
Unceasingly. Yeah. It was during this time something bad happened. My father's worship was not accepted by the spirit. So it started to attack my whole family. It was just mad. And it was during this time my father and uncles went everywhere finding somebody who would help us to get rid of the spirit. And they found none. Everybody that came and chanted mantras, nothing happened. They brought in all those witch doctors, sorcerers, black magicians, and everybody would come and chant mantras and go back, and the spirit would not buzz. Everybody in the family was sick, and the spirit would come on somebody and would openly, threaten and say, "I would kill all of you," literally. Two of my aunts went insane. They would just behave like very mad women, insane women. They would say, "Hey, we're the gods, worship us, we'll give you wealth." And the whole village would come and worship these insane women. Even my mother became very sick. And one evening, my mother was laying on her sick cot, and I was sitting beside her, by her leg side. Right in front of my eyes, my mother passed out. I shook her body, I screamed, I shouted, "Mommy, mommy," and she would not really wake up. And in those days, we had no doctors, we had no hospitals, and so we called the village heads. Soon the whole village gathered there, and the village head declared her dead, and that was in the evening. So, in our culture, when somebody's dead, you have to turn the cot upside down and then lay the body on that. And the whole night, you cannot bury dead or cremate a dead at night. You've got to do that in the morning when the sun comes up. So we had to wait for the whole night, and the whole village gathered to do the wailing and weeping ceremony. And they have a custom of, wailing and lamentations and stuff. So everybody came and did that. I called my guru who was helping me to learn mantras. He came and chanted a lot of mantras. Nothing happened. We gave up hope, and we were waiting for the morning so that we could take her to the crematorium. It was during this time my father and uncles went everywhere trying to find somebody who would help us, but there was no one to help. So my mother was laying there dead and cold the whole night. In the morning, before the body was to be taken out for the crematorium, the ladies had to do, as Hindus, the final ritual of applying the turmeric paste on her body. And because the ladies don't get to go to the crematorium, it's the men that only take the body to the ground to cremate. So the ladies would come up to some distance, they would apply the turmeric paste and powder on the body, and they would put multi-layers of clothes on her. Because in our culture, anybody that comes to a death situation, they don't bring flowers or wreath or anything. They bring a piece of clothes, and the clothes had to be put on her. So here she was laying dead and cold the whole night, and then multi-layers of clothes on her, and the turmeric paste were all over her body and bound. as these ladies were doing, there was a lady among this group who had been to a town near Raipur, the city that we landed in, and into a steel factory. And there somehow she was introduced to Jesus. She did not, show herself to be a Christian because she was not literate. She couldn't read any Bible. There was no church to go to in our area. So she had come back as a believer, but nobody knew that she was a believer. But something happened to her as she was also doing lamentation and weeping and wailing. She said, "Hey, this seems to be the attack of evil spirit. And if you want, I'll pray for her." And she would rise up. He said, "Wow, we're looking for anybody who would help us. Please go ahead and do whatever you want to do to get our mother back to life." This lady stoops down, touches my mother's shoulder, makes a very simple prayer, and just gets up. Right after she gets up, my mother shakes her body, sneezes and coughs, and sits down. She was surprised that she was in the deathbed. She jumps out of that bed, and everybody around her thinks that it was a ghost attacking them, so they all run away from there. But finally we know that it was my mother and not the ghost. And so everybody was so happy. My father threw a big feast because of my mother's coming back to life. But nobody ever thought about the prayer of this lady. As a growing young man already into chanting of mantras, I thought she might have chanted a powerful mantra. In the evening, I went to her house and I said, "Ma'am, you have a powerful mantra. Can you teach that mantra to me? I'll take you to be my guru. Can you make me a disciple, please?" And this lady says, I didn't chant any mantra. I prayed to Jesus. I said, "Well, who this Jesus is, tell me all about him." So I would sit down with her, and since she didn't read any Bible, she would just take bits and pieces of Bible story that she could remember and would narrate it to me. And every time she would speak from the stories of Jesus, I'd get goosebumps and something unusual would happen to me. A kind of peace and serenity would just set in. That went on for almost 2 years. I lost interest in going to the temple and chanting mantras, but I would visit this lady almost every day to talk about that Jesus. She was not very clear in what she was doing. She did not invite me to accept Jesus or to repent from my sin or to ask Jesus to come to my heart. All she did was whatever the bits and pieces of Bible stories that she could remember about Jesus, like the birth of Jesus or some miracles that he did or the demons that he cast and the death and all this little piece by piece he would just tell me, and I would find peace in it. By the end of the second year, she was not able to handle my passion and my questions anymore. And so sometimes she would feel very intimidated when I came to her house. One evening, this is almost by the end of the second year, one evening I was by her doorstep. She runs coming to see me from her room. She says, "Hey, have you come with some question today?" I say, "Yep." She runs back to her room, brings a piece of paper, throws it in my hand and says, "Go to this place. They would have answers to all your questions." So I take this piece of paper, and that turns out to be a place in Delhi, which was almost 2 hours of bicycle ride on a mountain trail. In those days, we didn't have any proper road, asphalt road. It was just a trail in wooded areas. I took 2 hours of bicycle ride, 6 hours of bus ride to a railway road, and 28 hours of train ride to a place called New Delhi. For a village boy, for the first time, coming out of that place was very unusual. I had never seen electricity, no running water. We were away from the civilization. I was like Mowgli in the Jungle Book. By the way, that Jungle Book was set in India, so you would understand. And so I got there, and how I got there was a miracle. That turned out to be a Bible college. The man had been to Southwestern, and he had got his Master of Divinity and had come back here to start a small Bible training center. And that's how I started my life, right there and it was there. I didn't speak any language. It was an English school, and they made it compulsory for everybody to speak only in English. And English was my fifth language. I had to, confront. So it was really hard. I was a misfit in that place. My hairstyle, my clothing, my language, my complete behavior was of no match to anybody in that place. And many times I was persecuted so badly within the Bible college. I had nothing, no single rupees that I had. For many months, I did not even use any soap or any shampoo or any toothpaste because I had nothing with me. But I stayed there. I'd go to the roof and I would just cry and weep and say, Lord, I came to know you. I did not come here to study in a college. Please help me. And it was amazing how the Spirit of the Lord started to open my heart and understanding to learn the language. Now, there were big punishments in that school. The first time you are caught speaking other than English, they would tell you to lift a chair and stand in the classroom. The second time you were caught speaking the language, they would say, okay, lift a bench and stand in the corridor that everybody sees you. The third time you were caught in speaking in other than English, they would say, okay, go and clean all the bathrooms and toilets. The fourth punishment, that was the last straw that broke the back of the camel, was get out of the campus. And one fine afternoon, I was talking with one of my friends in Oriya language, and this man was so strict, we called him Lion Man, just came from behind, got hold of my ears, and it was during lunchtime. He said, what was your last punishment? I said, I washed all the bathrooms and toilets in the dorms. And I said, leave your plate and get out of the campus. So I walked out. The gate was locked. It was in the month of December, and Delhi has got bone-chilling cold in December. And there was a heavy downpour. It rained like cats and dogs. I was just standing there and getting drenched in the water. As an obedient student, did not want to go away and take shelter of anything. And this man, either he forgot that he had punished me, or he didn't know that it was raining because his office was in the center of the building. But by 4:30, the gate was swung open, and this man walks out at the gate. And there, lo and behold, Avi standing like a sick chicken, shivering and shuddering of cold. He says, don't speak in any other language from today on. As I was walking back to my dorm, I spoke to the Lord and I said, Lord, please help me to understand this language. I would never ever speak a single word in any other language until I learned a little bit of English. So I took an English Bible and a Hindi Bible, put together, and I would stare at those sentences. Within 6 months, something very miraculous happened. Those sentences that I would stare out at me, and I would understand them very well. Those words became so obvious, the grammatical structures became so obvious, the syntax was so clear for me. And so within 6 months, I became the official translator from English to Hindi for that man who had punished me.
Wow.
And later he would give me his newsletters to edit before he could send out to friends. And so that way the Lord started to bless my understanding. And there came a time I became a master of English grammar. I might not use all those things when I speak because it's not my mother tongue and doesn't come naturally. But then I understood almost everything of English grammar. Let's talk about noun, pronoun, verb, adverb, preposition, conjunction, interjection. Let's talk about direct indirect speech, active, passive voice, tenses. Let's talk about modals, gerund, participle, non-finite, infinitive, anything. And I could give you directly an example from the Bible. It's because that's where I learned it from. And so later I became the English teacher of that college. Meanwhile, there was a man who really loved me so much, and he would take me to his room, and he was one of the professors, and he would teach me about Jesus. He was the one to lead me to Christ. I repented from my sins. I accepted Jesus, and I think it was around the 7th or 8th month of my stay in the Bible college, and then I decided to take baptism, and I became so strong believer in him, and nothing. And I would tell you, those were the golden days of my life, where I would spend hours together just sitting in the presence of God and thanking him for what he did for me. And every day that I would read the word as though the words were just staring at me, screaming out and telling me something important that I never knew about God. And so every day reading the Bible became so obvious, and were so clear, and discovering God's truth and knowing about God a little more every day was something that really fascinated me. I did not go to my home for almost 3 years, because I knew, number one, I didn't have money to go back. Number two, if I went back, my mother would not leave me. And so I wanted to finish my study and go back. So I took 3 years to finish my bachelor's degree, where others take 4 years, and sometimes 3.5 years. I just finished every credit hours in 3 years, and went back to my hometown. I gathered all my people. I made them known what had happened 5 years back when my mother had come back to life. And I said, it is Jesus. I preached the sermon. Talked to them about my testimony. My father, in the middle of my preaching, just stands up and says, Avi, I want to follow Jesus. Then my mother stands up, then my brother stands up, and then on that single day, 18 people from my family wanted to follow Jesus. I went to my mother's village, and there a few families accepted the Lord. And that way I took these people, baptized them in a river, and then God was calling me to have, grow deeper in His Word. And so I went back to the same college, and they had a distance program for Master of Divinity. And so I joined that program, and then I became the teacher for the junior children that came there. And that way I continued teaching, and I finished my master's, and I became a Bible college teacher in that place. Meanwhile, I took my brother to the same college, who had been baptized recently, and I put him for a 1 year course, and then I sent him back, and he's the pastor here, that you would see him. He's taking care of all the works right now. And so I continued in the Bible college, teaching there, and after that I joined my secular studies, and I did my bachelor's in English and mass communication, went back to the master's of English literature, and then I joined in the seminary and did my PhD in PhD in discipleship studies and oral culture. Went back to the secular college, and right now I'm working on my second PhD in linguistic studies. And I'm hoping and praying that the Lord will continue to give me wisdom to write things down, so that it can be helpful to the people who are willing to grow in the Lord. And so, coming from a background where none of my people have ever seen any school or college, as you would see today or tomorrow, my parents have never saw a school. My older siblings have never been to school. And yet the Lord was so gracious, and so there's nothing in me that I boast. The first PhD, that's why I say it was past high school with difficulties. And so I'm thankful to the Lord for His grace on me. I continued to teach in the Bible college, and I became a successful Bible teacher, and it was my passion. I would read books, and I became a very voracious reader since then. And there came a time from Monday to Friday I would be teaching in different Bible colleges all around Delhi. My summer vacations would be full of speaking engagements in those churches that students came from all around India. I contributed 6 different books as the textbooks they're still using in some of these colleges. And yet when I was having a great success and a reputation as a Bible teacher, the Spirit of God started to move me in a very different direction. I started to get a burden to get out of the campus and to go and relate with people, talk to people, and share about faith and bring them to Christ and plant churches, make disciples, raise leaders. That was my passion. And so I went and told to these Bible college people, and they did not really understand my heart. They said, we don't have that vision. If you want to do that, you can go out of the campus and do it. And so by 2001, I had to leave that place and get out to plant churches. And in 2003, I got married to my wonderful wife. And in 2004, we decided that we would go to a place where there is no church. And so in Delhi, we did a survey, and we found out that there were at least 7 different villages without any single Christian presence. And so with prayers, we went to one of them. And by God's grace, we have around 120 baptized believers in that place, and we lived in that village for almost 12 years. And recently, they moved to the city. We stay on the top stairs of the church that you were yesterday. They just moved hardly last month when I was in America. And so, but planting church was not that easy. I had to go through a lot of rough times, because all those things that I had been teaching in the Bible colleges about church planting did not really work. Because there's a big disconnect between the Christianity, the way we do, and the culture that India has. And so there are a lot of misunderstandings. People would think that, hey, this is the language of the foreigners, this is the religion of the British, the oppressors over us. And so it's very difficult for Indians to embrace Christianity. But by God's grace, with some of the difficulties we started, and today we have a little over 1,100 house churches all over Orissa right now, and baptisms are happening just rapidly. One of the struggles we have right now is to keep up with the speed of the leadership development, because most of these house churches that we have today are run now by those people who themselves are new believers of hardly 5 years to 3-4 years. Because as soon as they become a believer, and then soon they get a chance to lead a group, and when they are not trained, they are not educated, or they are not discipled properly under a tutorage of somebody who really knows the word, it becomes so hard. So with these untrained leaders that I have in the churches, it's very difficult to get those people rooted and grounded in God's word and discipleship. And so my focus right now is to read the situation, know the situation, develop curriculum, and raise master trainers, so that trainings will happen and these people would be raised as Christ-centered leaders, and would be able to continue to multiply ourselves as very reproducing churches. And so that's what the work I'm doing right now. In faith, I'm considered to be one of the great grandfathers, because I have seen at least 5 or 6 generations of believers after my disciples have gone out and have planted churches, and their disciples have gone, and their disciples have gone. And so the strategy that we have discovered is working so well to spread the church. Right now we are not mindful about spreading the church as much as we want to raise leaders and make these churches that we have planted strong enough. And so for these few years, I'll be concentrating more on leadership development and discipleship rather than evangelism, because the strategy that we have really makes the evangelism very easy. And getting a group of people just doesn't take any time, but helping them to be discipled takes a lot of time.